What's up, y'all? My name is Kenyatta. Today's video is all about how I bought 2 houses by the age of 24. When I bought my first house, I was 23. I was a senior in college at the time. When I bought my second house, which is a duplex, I was 24. I had been out of school less than a year during that time. I'm going to share with y'all the reasons I decided to make these purchases, what my circumstances were at the time, some reservations I had going into those purchases, some negatives of owning those properties, and the positives of owning those 2 properties. Before I get into it, I just wanted to take a second to ask you guys to hit the like button for me. It helps out a whole lot, so if you can do that, that would be great. All right, let's get into it. When I was in college, I wasn't making much money. Sometimes I had a part-time job, sometimes I didn't, really depending on how heavy my class load was at the time, running a student org on campus, doing research internships and that sort of thing. Even though I wasn't making much money, I was very interested in starting a business or making some sort of lucrative investment. My sister was on the same tip as I was, so we were always talking about how we can make money. We spent years talking, but no action. When I was home on Christmas break from school at the end of 2016, we went to a 2-day real estate seminar. This is one of those big box seminars where they give you a small amount of information and then try to sell you a super expensive coaching package at the end. So by the time the seminar was over, they presented multiple coaching packages starting at 20 grand, I believe. We definitely didn't buy those packages for multiple reasons, one being that we just didn't have the money. After that seminar, we went to a bar to talk about everything we had learned and figure out what our next moves were going to be. As we're sitting there having a drink, we ended up writing down some goals on a napkin. One of our goals was to complete at least one real estate deal by the end of the next year. We weren't specific about the type of deal we wanted to do. We just wanted to complete something. It was way more about the proof of concept and about building confidence more than it was about making a ton of money. There's a lot that happened between December 2016 and January 2018, and I'll probably make a video about that at some point, but in January 2018, we bought a single family rental property for $11,250 in Detroit, where we live. Remember, I was a 23-year-old college student at the time and didn't have much money to contribute to the purchase of the house. And like I said, there was a ton that went on behind the scenes to bring this deal to life and have everything fall into place. But long story short, I did most of the research and did most of the work behind the scenes to pull the deal together, then partnered with people that had capital to get it done. One of those people being my sister. The house needed about 10 grand worth of work before we could actually place a tenant. The renovations and the hunt for a tenant took way longer than we wanted to, but in June of 2018, we finally signed a lease with our new tenant. The numbers on this house are great, with the purchase price and rehab being very low compared to the rental value. But I was still very nervous going into this deal, and if I'm being real, I still am to this day. Okay, so the house is definitely in the hood, and there are pros and cons to having properties in areas like this. These kind of areas have the potential to have phenomenal profit margins if you know what you're doing, but you also run the risk of other things like getting your hot water tank or furnace stolen, which I have personally had happen to me. Not with this particular property, but I digress. I was also worried about the fact that other people's money was on the line. Remember, I didn't have the cash to do this deal on my own, so I partnered and used OPM, other people's money. I felt like failure wasn't an option because it wouldn't just be me that was taking the L. It would also be the other investors involved in the process. Okay, so enough about the bad stuff. Let's talk about some of the good things. The property was cheap and it had good bones, as they say, which was right up our alley. Yeah, it was in the hood, but it was in an area that we were at least familiar with. My sister and I grew up in Detroit, so we know what to expect from the city. Plus, we lived close enough that we could go drive by and take a look every now and again when we wanted to. This is definitely a pro as opposed to investing in other cheap areas in different cities or even in different states. They say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. The biggest pro to buying that house was that it introduced me to real estate. Everything seems way less mysterious once you've actually done it before. Not to mention the passive income that property brings in every month. I'll discuss more about that and the business of it all in a future video. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you want to see more content about my passive income investments, my real estate investments, we'll get into that in the future. Okay, let's get back into it. So buying that first house built my confidence and made me more hungry to continue to build my wealth through real estate investments. When I graduated in May of 2018, I was blessed to already have a good job lined up. That job turned out to be super demanding and had me working a ton of overtime, which I hated from a mental perspective. But at the same time, I was making a lot of money. But the thing is, I couldn't actually spend the money because I was always at work. So I just used this time to stack my savings. Plus, I had the blessing of living with my dad rent-free at the time, so my expenses were virtually nothing. I knew I wanted to buy a multifamily property as a house hack and push my real estate investing career further, so I gave myself 1 year from graduation to begin looking at houses. In the meantime, I was always listening to podcasts, reading articles, browsing for houses online, and running numbers on deals that I had no intention of actually buying. I was doing all of this because I wanted to increase my real estate knowledge so that when the time came for me to actually put myself in front of a deal, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm looking at, I know what the numbers meant. However, that behavior had an unintended consequence. It made me eager to jump into the market. I was online every day watching great opportunities being bought and sold and rented, and I just felt like I was missing out on so many amazing deals. I couldn't wait anymore, so I reached out to a mortgage broker to see if I qualified for a loan, and the ball just started rolling from there. I'll make more videos in the future discussing the details of the home buying process and how one can get into a mortgage and all that kind of stuff. After a very long and tedious house hunting process, I finally found something at the end of 2018. But the house was a short sale, so it extended the home buying process longer than usual, so I didn't actually close on that property until February 2019. I was 24 years old and had been out of college for 9 months at the time. I was very scared about getting a mortgage in my own name, no co-signer, just me. I was thinking, what if something happens and I can't pay the mortgage for some reason? What if the house is a lemon? What if I didn't analyze the deal properly and I end up losing money, and so on and so forth? All these negative thoughts are just in the back of my mind. I wasn't able to shake that fear. But here's a pro tip for somebody that might need to hear it. Do it scared. I couldn't get that fear out of the back of my mind, but I had done the research and I knew what I was doing. So I went to the closing table with that fear in the back of my mind, and I'm so glad that I did. The house was a duplex that needed work. I did most of the work myself with much appreciated help from my dad. Shout out to Dad, thanks. And then after the renovations, I was able to rent out the lower 2-bedroom unit to a tenant while I lived in the upper 1-bedroom unit. I mentioned house hacking earlier, which is basically when you buy a multifamily property and use rent from the tenants to have a reduced housing payment. If you get an amazing deal, it's possible to live completely rent-free or even get paid to live in the house. The duplex I currently live in is a great example of a house hack that I was able to purchase with low money down FHA loan. Eventually, I'll move out and I'll rent out both units to tenants. The house has certainly been a headache, and I'm actually still worried about the investment long term, but overall at this point I can say the house hacking has been a great thing for me. Having a renter subsidize my housing cost has allowed me to move out of my dad's place and gain some independence while also still keeping my expenses very low. This arrangement has allowed me to continue saving aggressively so that I can have more money to put into future investments at some point when I get ready to do that. This was just an overview of how I got started in my journey in real estate investing. But in the future, I'll go into details about specific things that I've mentioned here and some things that I haven't touched on yet. The point for me in telling this story and sharing this is I hope that it inspires somebody to go ahead and do some of those things that you talk about but don't actually take action on. I was tired of sitting around talking about money and sitting around talking about real estate. I wanted to actually get my hands in as well. Like, I wanted to build wealth as well. So I had to jump in and just do it. And again, like the whole thing I said earlier about doing it scared, just do it. Do it scared. Do it scared. At least it gets done. And if you mess up, that sucks. I've had my fair share of L's. I've definitely lost very real money of my own through the trial and error process of it all. This has definitely not been easy for me, and it still isn't easy at this moment in time, but it's definitely been worth it. All right, y'all, so that's the story of how I purchased 2 properties by the age of 24. If you have any questions about anything specific that I mentioned, drop them in the comments, or if you have any topics that you want me to touch on in the future, you can also drop those in the comments. All right, one more time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That would really help me out a lot. All right, y'all. Peace.